The screams, they said, could be heard for miles. Summer, 1462. You are an Ottoman soldier marching with the most devastating army the world has ever known. You were there when Constantinople fell. You watched the impossible walls crumble. You saw empires erased from history, and now you advance toward a tiny, insignificant principality called Wallachia to crush a rebel prince. It should be simple, quick, a matter of days, weeks at most. Then the wind shifts and it brings a smell, death, advanced decay. But there is something else. Something your stomach understands before your mind does. The column slows. The scouts ahead have stopped moving. Something is wrong. You can feel it in the way the silence becomes too thick, too heavy, suffocating. And then you round the hill near the capital. A forest rises before your eyes. But these aren't trees. The trees are made of human flesh. They are your brothers, your comrades. 20,000 Ottoman soldiers lifted toward the sky on wooden stakes, arranged in perfect geometric rows, stretching all the way to the horizon. Some have been dead for weeks, their bodies swollen and black under the burning sun. Others still move, still breathe, still try to scream. Mehmed II, the conqueror, the man who destroyed Byzantium, takes one look at that forest of corpses and turns his entire army back. What kind of mind creates something like this? Here is what should truly terrify you. This wasn't madness, it was strategy. Cold, calculated, and devastatingly effective. The story you think you know about Vlad the Impaler is a lie. Not because the events are false, but because the truth is infinitely worse. This is the account of how one man turned human suffering into a weapon powerful enough to alter the course of empires. And you will understand that the real horror was never what he did to bodies, it was what he did to minds. To understand the force, we must go back. Far back to a child. Vlad is 11 years old. His father, Vlad II Dracula, has just made a pact with the Ottoman Sultan to hold on to his fragile throne. He hands over his two youngest sons as collateral, as bargaining chips. Vlad and his brother Radu are ripped from everything they know and dragged across hundreds of miles into the heart of the empire that rules half the world. Officially, they are guests, a pretty word hiding a brutal truth. They receive education, military training, languages, philosophy, but beneath the polished surface, something far darker is happening. Because this is not education, it is psychological engineering. Vlad spends his adolescence watching the Ottomans use fear as a tool of control. He witnesses public executions designed not to punish, but to terrorize entire populations. He learns that terror, when applied with surgical precision, is more devastating than 10,000 soldiers. Every torture technique he sees, he memorizes. Every punishment he suffers, he analyzes, dissects, understands. Imagine this for a moment. You're 11, 12, 13, torn from home, surrounded by people who speak a foreign tongue. You watch your brother Radu slowly bend, adapt, embrace the captors, but you do not bend. On the outside, you learn to smile, to be diplomatic. On the inside, you are building something, brick by brick, trauma by trauma, a weapon. Years pass, and when Vlad finally returns, he is no longer a child. He is something else, something forged in fire, tempered by humiliation, sharpened by suppressed rage. And what does he find upon returning? His father murdered by the very nobles sworn to protect him. His older brother Mircea captured and buried alive with only his face above ground, left that way until death finally took him. Wallachia is shattered, torn apart by greedy warlords, treacherous nobles known as boyards, Hungarians to the north, Ottomans to the south. Vlad has nothing, no army, no fortress, no gold, only his mind and the lessons carved into him as a hostage. He seizes the throne in 1456 through political maneuvering, but the moment he sits upon it, something changes. Everyone feels it. The air thickens, like a storm gathering. His first act is not celebration, it is elimination. A massive purge of the boyars who orchestrated his father's death. Vlad does not simply kill them, he breaks them, methodically, publicly. Some are impaled stakes driven upward, emerging through the shoulder, designed to avoid vital organs and prolong agony for days. Others meet a different, perhaps worse, fate, forced to march barefoot, half-naked, across miles of rocky terrain to a ruined mountain fortress. There, with hands that never knew labor, they must rebuild the walls, stone by stone, without rest. Their silk robes turn to bloody rags. Their delicate hands become raw flesh. They work until they collapse and die. Most never leave that mountain. This was not emotional revenge, it was politics, a message carved in blood. I will destroy you before you destroy me. The moment that set Europe ablaze came in 1459. Ottoman envoys arrived, demanding tribute. When they refused to remove their turbans out of religious custom, Vlad praised their devotion. He smiled, called them unwavering men of faith, and then he ordered their turbans to be nailed to their skulls with iron spikes. He didn't kill them, and that is the crucial part. He sent them back, alive, conscious, bleeding, walking messages, living warnings, propaganda shaped into human form. Imagine what that did to the Ottoman psyche. These men stumbling into the Sultan's court, dazed, trembling, delirious turbans fused to their flesh, dripping blood, their eyes filled with permanent terror. The message was unmistakable. I do not fear you, I challenge you, and when you come, I will make you wish you had never been born. And the Ottomans came, exactly as Vlad knew they would. Mehmed II, the conqueror, marched with tens of thousands of soldiers to crush this insolent prince. But Vlad did not meet him in open battle. He knew he would lose. So he used the lessons forged into him as a child. Terror, deception, psychological warfare refined into art. He began by burning his own villages, his own towns, poisoning his own wells, emptying the entire countryside, turning Wallachia into a ghost land where the Ottoman army had nothing to eat, nothing to drink. They marched through a landscape of ash and corpses. Hunger gnawed at them, thirst tortured them, and then the night attacks began. Small Wallachian units, dressed in stolen Ottoman uniforms, infiltrated the camps, killing silently, slitting throats inside tents, poisoning food, whispering in perfect Turkish before vanishing into the darkness like ghosts. Soldiers stopped sleeping, paranoia spread like a plague. Men began killing their own comrades, convinced they were spies. Trust evaporated. Fear became physical, something you could taste in the air, something that pressed against your chest, something that whispered to you every time you closed your eyes. And then came the darkest night of all. Vlad personally led a massive assault on the Sultan's own camp. Thousands of Wallachian riders tore through the Ottoman lines under the cover of absolute darkness, cutting down tents, killing everything in their path. Searching desperately for the imperial pavilion, they almost succeeded. They almost captured or killed the conqueror of Constantinople. Almost the chaos was absolute. By dawn, thousands lay dead. The rest were broken, psychologically ruined. But nothing compared to what came after. When Mehmed II finally approached the Wallachian capital, he found no army waiting. He found silence, a silence so heavy it felt unnatural. And then, as his column crested the final hill, they saw it. 20,000 men, Ottoman soldiers captured over the course of months. Impaled on stakes rising like grotesque trees across the plain, rows perfectly geometric, stretching for miles. Some corpses had been there for weeks, blackened, bloated, swarming with crows. Others had only days, still recognizable, their faces frozen in eternal agony. And some were still alive, still moving, still trying to scream with throats that no longer worked. The smell was unbearable, the sound was worse, and the sight seared itself forever into the minds of every surviving soldier, an image they would see every time they closed their eyes for the rest of their lives. Mehmed II, the greatest military commander of his age, halted his horse, stared in silence, and turned his entire army back. Vlad had defeated an empire using fear alone. Think about that. No final battle, no glorious siege, just terror, pure, absolute terror so overwhelming that it shattered the will of the most powerful man in the world. The forest wasn't built to kill the 20,000 already dying on the stakes. It was built to kill the will of every soldier who saw it, to plant images in their minds that could never be erased. The weapon Vlad created eventually turned against him. Once terror became his tool, he could no longer stop using it. The darkness that shaped him in the Ottoman court had become the only force guiding his hand. What once protected Wallachia now began to rot it from within. Vlad no longer saw the difference between threat and innocence. Fear was the only language he trusted. He impaled merchants who raised prices, villagers for minor offenses, nobles for imagined conspiracies. Beggars vanished from the streets. Women were executed on accusations whispered without proof. Even starving children suffered the same fate for stealing bread. The brutality that once held invaders at bay now devoured his own people. The stakes that had marked the borders now stood in the center of towns. Fear became a living presence, silent, constant, inescapable, and whispers spread through Wallachia like a sickness. He has lost his mind. He no longer protects us. We are prisoners in our own land. It was then that Radu returned, the brother who once shared Vlad's captivity, but who chose loyalty to the Ottomans. He came backed by imperial armies, and the people of Wallachia, exhausted and terrified, allowed Vlad to fall. It was not a celebration. It was quiet, guilty relief. Vlad was taken captive and spent 12 years in prison, ironically, living comfortably, yet stripped of power. Time passed. The terror he created faded into myth. The stakes rotted. The screams became stories told around fires. And when the shifting tides of medieval politics aligned once more, Vlad returned. His second reign lasted only months. He died in battle in December 1476, charging headfirst into enemies who now included his own people. Some believe betrayal killed him. Others say fate simply caught the man who had outrun it for too long. His head was severed, preserved in honey, and sent to the Sultan in Constantinople, a final symbol that the terror had ended. His body vanished, lost to time. Centuries later, when archaeologists searched for his tomb at Snagov Monastery, they found only an empty grave, as if the earth itself refused to keep him. And so the question that echoes across centuries remains: was Vlad a monster, or the product of a world that breeds monsters? He was not born evil. He was carved by trauma, sharpened by betrayal, and armed with the only tool he believed worked: fear. He learned from the Ottomans that terror, applied with precision, could bend wills, break armies, and alter history. And he was right. It worked. The forest of the impaled was not insanity. It was strategy cold, brilliant, horrifying. But the true horror is not that such a man existed. It is that his methods were effective. That terror, when used intelligently, can achieve the impossible. It forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. In a world brutal enough, monsters are not exceptions. They are adaptations. Vlad. Vlad Dracula. Vlad the Impaler. A man turned myth. A myth turned nightmare. And in a grave that no longer holds him, his absence still screams louder than his presence ever did.